This is Linux in Laws, a podcast on topics around free and open source software, any associated contraband, communism, the revolution in general, and whatever else fancies your tickle. Please note that this and other episodes may contain strong language, offensive humor, and other certainly not politically correct language. You have been warned. Our parents insisted on this disclaimer. Happy Mum? Thus, the content is not suitable for consumption in the workplace, especially when played back on a speaker in an open plan office or similar environments. Any minors under the age of 35, or any pets, including fluffy little killer bunnies, your trusted guide dog, unless on speed, and cute T-Rexes or other associated dinosaurs. Welcome to Linux in Laws, Season 1, Episode 94. How are things, Martin?
Not too bad, not too bad. Unlike some people, I'm not in a hospital, so I'm fine.
Very good.
How about you?
Can't complain. Can't complain, Martin.
I suppose not with the menu that they have at the place that you're staying.
Something for the outtakes, I suppose. Moving on to much more innocent subjects in terms of diplomatic. No, what's what I'm looking for? Neutral subjects. What's the weather like, Martin? Balmy -5 degrees as usual in November in around Birmingham?
-5? No. We don't have -5 yet. That will be sometime.
That's tomorrow, right?
No. It's we don't normally get any negative temperatures until, let's say, January, February time.
Ever tried closing the windows? Just wondering.
So
that the heat doesn't get out.
It's global warming anyway. We have to.
Thanks to Greta, yes.
Yes, indeed. There's some benefits to this for sure.
Absolutely. But this is not the weather podcast. We have a very interesting guest tonight.
We do.
I would like to introduce Lars Wallenborn. I hope I got this right. I didn't butcher your name. But without further ado, Lars, why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi. Nice to be here. You didn't butcher my name at all. Lars Wallenborn is correct. Cool. Let's see if I can live up to the interesting part of being a guest here, but I am a guest at least. That's
no
true.
Pressure.
Yeah, how should I start? I would say I'm working in cybersecurity. I guess that's why we came. We started talking, Chris and I, at an open source conference. I work there as a software developer and reverse engineer. I have a bit of background in mathematics, so I studied maths in the beautiful city of Bonn, Germany. But since I moved away from academia, I didn't really touch mathematics anymore. So it's more like a mathematician at heart, but not in training or even working in mathematics anymore. Anyway, I work in cybersecurity, which is a loaded term, I assume. And you introduced, you invited me to your podcast here, and I'm super excited to be here. It was pretty cool, actually, to tell other people I don't have time tonight. I'm invited at a podcast to speak as a guest. So,
full disclosure, Lars runs a podcast himself.
Indeed.
Oh, yeah.
Lars almost forgot
you missed
to
out that
mention
it. Right. That's the next step as an internet content producer, right? Being guest at another podcast and inviting each other and sharing likes and subscriptions and whatnot. Yeah. So correct. I will quickly self-plug this. I run a podcast called I run a podcast called Armchair Investigators together with my friend Chris. He's a professor for cybersecurity at a Hochschule here in Germany, and we cover a lot of these like cyber topics. And normally we pick an incident, some interesting incident that has either is somehow timely or somehow relevant to Germany in the widest sense, and then we shed light on it from a cyber perspective. It's in German, so not everyone listening to this one might enjoy it, or maybe brush up your German and then try listening to it. But our goal there is to bring cyber to the people, so to say, to make it all more. I mean, because there's a lot of shit talk, and there's a lot of things that people say, and and the topic, and in addition to that, the topic is also quite complex, and we try to make it a bit more understandable, even for like your parents, so to say. Not everything will be understood by your parents, but I think the gist might or should be understandable. That's our.
Sorry, quick question on that. Why in German? English is clearly very good.
Thank you very much.
Lars, the name of it is English, right?
Yeah, that's also correct. I mean, we borrowed the name from these armchair investigators from these true crime podcasts. Basically, people at home solving crimes on and armchair also has this kind of only from the sideline, only from the back seat kind of deal. So we don't want to exaggerate, or we don't want to raise expectations. Yes, the name is English. Why in German? I think we didn't think about it in the very beginning, and now we're kind of locked in. I could sell it as we do it in German to bring all these cyber topics to German audience, because I don't know if you... So there was at some point the German chancellor, she said that the whole internet topic, that's Neuland, that's like undiscovered territory for the government. So internet is Neuland, and I think we try to contribute to the fact to make it less of undiscovered territory.
That was about a year ago, right? Because she went out of power around a year ago.
Oh, it was super long ago. I think it was 7, 8, 9 years ago or something. I would need to look it up. But yeah, I mean, the social media shitstorm was quite severe at the time. When, I mean, in my opinion, she was right. The internet is a tough cookie, or hard. I don't know. Is there an English proverb? Is a hard cookie to crack? Is it a hard nut to crack? I don't know.
Hard nut to crack. Yeah. Tough cookie. I think
tough cookie.
Yes.
Yeah, tough cookie. Exactly. Especially from a policy or lawmaker perspective, or from a country perspective, so to say. But yeah, people were making fun of her because people were making fun of her. But I think she was right. Long story short, our podcast is in German to bring all the internet-related cyber topics to the people. I think that's the TLDR.
Details, of course, or the link will be in the show notes, people.
Yeah, thank you very much.
You're more than welcome. Okay, full disclosure, Lars and myself met at FLOSSCon, this year FLOSSCon actually, because we're recording this in November 2022. And Lars spoke about, if I recall this correctly, about a forensic topic, maybe, if I recall this correctly.
Mm-hmm. One could say that, yeah.
And this immediately, needless to say, drew my attention in terms of open source, IT security, and all the rest of it. And so, what do you think, Lars? I mean, at this very point in time, it's still 2022. What would you think is the biggest challenge at the moment in the era of cybersecurity, and how could open source possibly help to address this? It's a broad question, so we have about 6 hours, or maximum 5 hours.
Yeah, I mean, what's the biggest problem in cybersecurity? I mean, there are obviously some marketing answers to that question. I don't know, ransomware is costing a lot of money and so on and so forth. But maybe I will just give a nerdy answer that comes to mind.
Give it a shot, exactly.
Yeah. So and my nerdy answer also has a free and open source software angle to it, so it perfectly fits here. So a lot of people working in cybersecurity, I mean, a lot of people in cybersecurity are very passionate about the topic. They are also spend time on the side, not only at work, but also for fun. And they explore topics, they explore technology. I mean, this whole hacker culture, hacker in the positive sense, not in the threat actor, money-making sense, is kind of very close to the cyber threat intelligence or cyber community in general. So a lot of people contribute to open source. Some contribute to open source on their work time as well, and some just on the side. But I think there is a huge problem. And hey, maybe you two can explain how to solve this problem. I mean, you are a free and open source software podcast after all. A lot of people put out their stuff, and it's very cool things, they solve very complex, in-depth technical questions with their tools that they put out, but there is no real incentive to keep at it. So I recently worked together on a software project on the side with a few friends, and we assessed software dependencies on how outdated or how maintained they are. And they looked at a few dependencies and they were like, oh, this repository didn't receive a commit within the last month or something. And they called it abandonware because of that, like a very strong term in my opinion. For cyber threat intelligence community or cyber tooling, so to say, a repository that was touched in the last 2 years is something good. That's something that people kind of looked at because there's so much stuff out there that people got excited. People put out their things on GitHub and whatnot. And then they never come back to it. They never improve it. They never touch it again. I guess because...
Maintain, I think.
Yeah, maintain. They don't maintain it.
That's the boring bit.
Yeah, probably the boring bit. Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I mean, that's probably, and I guess that's a problem not only for tooling here, but for tooling everywhere, right? What is the solution? Coming up with a strong community, raising funds, paying people? I don't know.
I mean, I reckon it pretty much depends on the project, right? I mean, if the code base is anything to go by, if the vision behind the code base is something that draws the community, somebody will pick it up before it falls victim to bit rot, and then evolve it over time. And there have been numerous examples. What I'm pretty much more concerned with is actually supply chain management with these repos. And I think we're touching on a very important subject here. How do you prevent introducing bad actors, introducing kind of backdoors in open source code bases on GitHub or not?
Yeah, that's. Oh, sorry, my cat just meowed into the microphone. Smilla, it's not your. Oh no, she's not.
It wasn't you.
No worries.
I very rarely meow. First of all, to me, the term supply chain attack is really triggering. So because it feels like nowadays everything is a supply chain attack. But I think what you're alluding to is this thing where malicious threat actors take over some dependency and then start pushing malicious code with a backdoor and so on and so forth, right?
And NPM probably being the best example, as in the JavaScript package management system. There were quite a few instances in the past where exactly that happened. And thank God, people copped onto the fact, but it still happened in the first place.
Yeah, I mean, stuff like this happens all the time, not only to Node, but also to PyPy. That was actually not a malicious actor, but it was, must have been maybe 8 years ago or something. Maybe I can dig it up. Some guy was annoyed by how Node or something runs their stuff, and he decided to remove all his packages from the package repository. Yeah, and one of the one of the packages was lpad, which solves the very complex problem of padding a string to a certain length to the left. And
which is of course an NP-complete problem, if I'm not completely mistaken, right?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think not at all, to be honest. I think it's linear time.
Okay, any take on
but
this?
I mean,
Mr. Visser. Mr. Visser has gone off to get a cup of tea. That's okay.
Sorry, LPAD. Yeah, no, that's 01, isn't it?
Is it? Fair enough.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, okay, but anyway, coming back to the threat actor perspective on this, yes, this happens all the time, and it's probably because, I mean, there are multiple, attack vectors, so to say, into this. So first of all, there was a case where someone found, did exactly what you just said, Martin. They found, or Chris, I think Chris, you said it. They found an unmaintained piece of library code, and they volunteered to continue maintaining it. And they got commit access to the repository and to the node package. And then they they maintained it for a couple of weeks, and then they integrated the backdoor. So that's like a very simple attack vector. Or a more, a human-focused attack vector. Then there are also more technical attack vectors. For example, a lot of these package repositories are just open. It's not like I don't even know. I mean, I'm demonstrating my ignorance here. I don't even know how to get a package into the Debian repository, but I assume it's much harder to get it in there than, I don't know, publish a package on PyPy. That's the Python package repository. And people just push packages that have typo squatted names to large existing packages. So I don't know, if the package is called requests, they swap 2 letters and publish a malicious package under that name, or the same package but with a backdoor in it or something like that.
Just to answer Debbie's question, I mean, this is really straightforward. You impersonate via clever social engineering somebody called Chris Lamb, who is an Debian architect. You just compromise a few build servers, then you crack a couple of GitHub repositories, only a few 100,000, I suppose, and then you compromise this relation further, and off you go. It's not that hard.
Yeah,
that's
that I've
true. Done it before.
It's probably even what you just described is probably simpler than going the official route, right?
More than likely. Martin, any take on this?
Well, social engineering is the answer to everything, right? Never mind all this IT security stuff. It can all be fixed with social engineering.
As any kid can tell you, exactly.
Anyway, yeah, carry on.
Yeah, so there are multiple. Yeah, no, sure. And I mean, you can also compromise other parts of this whole supply chain. But I mean, yeah, compromising packages. There was another very interesting case, in my opinion, that happened at the beginning of the war in the Ukraine. I mean, this is not a political podcast, but mentioning it is fine, right? Isn't it?
Absolutely.
Okay,
cool.
cool.
Could be disguised as such with past performance. Anyway, carry on. Yeah.
So there was someone that would classify as a so-called hacktivist, and they wanted to contribute to the Ukrainian war effort, and they decided to put I forgot what they had. They had like some software library, some dependency that was used in a bunch of projects. And they just decided that the package will look up its own IP address using some service like What's My IP or whatever. And if the IP is geolocated in Russia, they just encrypt the entire system and destroy the data on it. This is, I mean, obviously a very bad idea.
Sounds a little bit too simplistic as well. But well, I'm an expert in IT security.
No, I think I mean there is this super weird situation. Okay, I don't know. I mean, this is a podcast where you can talk a lot. So I will. I'm missing an English term right now. I will stop talking.
No, this is the point of the podcast. So there's this. Do all the talking as well. Carry on. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So there's this book that is called The Cuckoo's Egg. It's written by Clifford Stoll. I can definitely recommend the book, even though it's super old now. It's still important in my opinion, and it's kind of the founding book of cyber threat intelligence as we know it today. So it's a book about a guy working at a university, and I think their first task there is to, I think they are finished their studies and then they continued working there. And the first work task there was to figure out a bug in the accounting system. This was like in the 70s or something. So they were like huge computers, and people who want to do calculations on them, they could dial into them and then execute algorithms and so on. And at the end of the month, there were always a few cents off. So there was a bit more time calculated or more calculation time spent than money like put on invoices. And his task was to figure out the reason for that, like the bug in the accounting system. Turns out it wasn't a bug in the accounting system. It was like threat actors being on the system and like calculating or using the system as a hop point. And my point is, this is like the founding book of this whole topic, in my opinion, and one of the founding books. And at that point, people already obfuscated their IP addresses. So at that point, people were already using jump hosts and so on and so forth. And I can't stand it when people continue this stuff with like, the IP address is located in Russia, hence this is Russian activity and whatever. I mean, it's just so stupid.
That's fair enough. Yeah. We started on the open source topic, but we kind of skipped a little bit about your own. We can come back to that in a minute. That's okay. Because I still like to understand a little bit more. I mean, you mentioned you work in cybersecurity, and you started with mathematics, but so what does your job involve? Right, this is your day job is to look after cybersecurity for a certain firm, I imagine.
Yeah, absolutely. I work for CrowdStrike. That's one of the bigger companies in this cyber threat intelligence or cyber industry in the widest sense. Huh? Sorry,
just checking, Lars. Martin, are they on our sponsor list? Because in that case, if they're not, we have to cut this out.
No, I don't think they are, actually.
Fair enough. Just checking before accounts get back to me and kind of complains about unpaid bills and stuff.
You're running a tight ship here. You're running a tight ship.
Just checking, Lars. I didn't mean to start. Sorry, go ahead.
No problem. And,
sorry, CrowdStrike, if you're listening, the email was a sponsor. Just in case. Sorry, go ahead, Lars.
No problem. Yeah, and we do. I mean, the company CrowdStrike as a whole does a lot of stuff there. We have like one of these sensor products that protect endpoints and so on and so forth. And I work like in a sub team that solely focuses on this cyber threat intelligence topic. And that's also something I'm very passionate about. I think because I mean First of all, the word itself, cyber threat intelligence, is very loaded. It's mainly a marketing term nowadays, but in my opinion, it also has a meaning. I better have that opinion, otherwise my job would just be a marketing term, I guess. And
so you work in marketing?
Yeah, I work at more. Yeah, that's a TLDR here.
Martin, it may come as a surprise to you, but most of us are. Working in marketing.
In some sense.
Exactly.
No, I work as a reverse engineer in my day-to-day, or on the between the topics of reverse engineering and software development, so to say. I also develop tools for reverse engineers internally, and so on. And with reverse engineering, I mean this whole topic of picking apart. So I mean we don't do reverse engineering of proprietary software for industrial espionage reasons.
Yeah,
we solely reverse.
Before the cops get onto us.
Yeah, I mean, especially in Germany, it's kind of a funny topic because I once met an old acquaintance from university times at the bus, and I said I'm a reverse engineer now, and he's like, "Oh, isn't this illegal in Germany?" And I was like, "No, I don't think that's illegal." And he was like, "Oh yeah, I'm pretty sure it's illegal." And I think, as always, the answer in all these legal topics. I mean, I'm not a lawyer, but the answer in my experience always is it depends. And we at work, just to get this out, and I don't forget to get this out, we focus on reverse engineering of malware. So adversaries, that's like the umbrella term for evil hackers, evil threat actors, whatever you want to call it. They use tools to carry out their operations. And part of my job is to pick these tools apart and understand what they do, what they are capable to do, and basically document it all.
Sorry, so if I'm a malware author, I just pick up the phone or send you a mail, send you the malware, and then I send you some money, and you do an attack surface analysis, and then you get back to me with the weak spots. Excellent.
Yes.
This is CrowdStrike business model. I see. Okay,
good. I mean, you still need to buy the CrowdStrike reports. So, but yeah, I think
the catch.
And I see where you're coming from. So you touched on the topic. Where do we get the malware that we analyze from, or
and to get a sense of scale? I mean, how many new malwares come out? Right, there presumably lots of them
millions
right.
samples per time unit. It's like unbearable. It's like, but I mean, so. First of all, I mean, a new sample formally happens even if you just append a random byte to an existing sample. Most tools or most file formats don't even break if you append a random byte, so the hash changes. That's obviously not what we mean with a new family or something, but formally it's a new sample. And deduplicating that obviously is a challenge, yada, yada. But then there's also the question of what even is a malware family, right? And that absolutely gets philosophical at some point. So if it talks like a duck, walks like a duck, and so on, is it really a duck? So if you have like a malware that has, I don't know, 7 very specific capabilities, and then another sample comes around with the exact same 7 capabilities, it probably belongs to the same family. If it only has 6 of these 7 capabilities, maybe it's still the same family, just an earlier version or later version that is stripped down. But then again, if, for example, a sample having the exact same capabilities comes around, but it's written in a different programming language, so it's not written in C, but in, I don't know, Rust or Python or whatever, is it a different malware family? Does it like warrant a new name, or should you cluster it under the same name or not? So that's like there's a lot of, wordsmithing that you can do, basically. Yes, and developing malware is just a business, right? So especially for the criminal actors, for them, it's you write a new malware and you put it out there, get it in the hands of other people who pay good money for it, and then these people can use it. And it's a striving ecosystem. It's the what was it? Who said it? I think it was Donald Trump. Like a lonely guy it's a lonely guy in his basement or something like that. I don't know the exact words anymore, but I think the days of the lonely hacker sitting in their mom's basements are definitely over. At least when it comes to evil hackers, not the creative types, but the evil ones. They are just business people running businesses, making money.
This is organized crime, and it didn't start with CryptoLockers, right? That went on even way before that.
Yeah, Chris and I. Oh man, good. Chris and I, we have a podcast episode on the history of ransomware. So if you are happy to be German, then you can listen to it. Anyway, yes, CryptoLockers are one way of monetizing stuff, and they also have a history behind them. I mean, originally there were these tools, these lockers that were not really lockers because they only showed like an annoying message or something, fake AVs and so on. Or they, I don't know, put themselves into full screen and you couldn't close them and you needed to pay money basically to just disable the program. Yeah.
Sorry, quick interlude. Maybe for the 2 listeners in the audience who do not know what a CryptoLocker is, maybe just a short explanation on this.
Yes, sure thing. So with CryptoLocker, you mean ransomware, right? So
exactly.
Oh yeah, cool. So that's basically some malware that if you execute it, it encrypts files on your system that you want access to, and then it exfiltrates, somehow displaces the key material that is necessary to decrypt the files again, and then it basically extorts money for the key material so you can decrypt your stuff. And there are some variations of this. Like sometimes they also threaten to leak the data. Sometimes they also exfiltrate the data that is encrypted before encrypting it, and then threaten to leak it. And sometimes they just don't leak it, but they auction it. So there's another income stream being generated there. But the high level explanation is they encrypt your data, and you need to pay money to get the key material and your data back.
Hence the term ransomware, exactly, because
they ransom it out. Yeah,
exactly.
And I mean, this is kind of a very covered topic. Everyone is talking about ransomware nowadays. It's part of the I don't know, US cyber strategy, and there's tons of money in it. Companies basically need to decide if it's worth paying the ransom or if it's worth investing in a better security posture. And in some ironic sense, ransomware is a very strong driver of cybersecurity, in the sense that companies have backups now, and they have like perimeter defense and endpoint defense and all that stuff to defend against ransomware, so to say. In my opinion, ransomware is a bit fairer than the crimeware that was on vogue before. I mean, before that, there were like a lot of botnets, for example. And there, the people that got themselves infected with the malware were not actually the people that needed to, that were, I'm missing an English word now. Yeah, that were not they didn't have the, they weren't the target. Yeah, I mean, they were kind of the target because the malware is executing on the system, but they were not the, they didn't have the downsides of it.
Yeah, they were just really just being used to target someone else.
And someone else saw the bad sides of it. We all saw it because we got the spam emails that were sent by all these botnets, run by all these people that infect themselves with malware. And ransomware kind of turned this around again. So now people are incentivized to not infect themselves with malware because they might lose their data. So that's. I'm always trying to look at the bright side. So that's the bright side of ransomware right there. Where were we coming from?
The bright side is yeah, exactly. The bright side being that people spend more effort on securing their data, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
At the end of the day, Lars, it's a rat race, right? I mean, you have the people defending themselves and you have the attackers. And it's just a matter of raising the bar because, as we all know, there's no such thing as a secure computer system, as an 100% secure computer system, because you can only do so much. And it only takes maybe a social engineering vector, and then you're in.
Yeah, I mean, that's the old metaphor of the defenders need to make everything right, but the attackers only need to succeed once. But there is also a different... I think you can also turn this around a bit. So there are... I can't believe it, but I will mention the Lockheed Martin kill chain now. I'm a bit annoyed by the fact that all these cyber topics are so loaded with military terms, but that's just how it is. And
Please
the kill
explain
chain,
what this is exactly.
Yes, I will. And the kill chain is the following: it's like a sequence of steps that an adversary needs to execute in order to reach their goal. So they first need to do some reconnaissance, then they need to weaponize an exploit or weaponize a phishing email, something like that. Then they need to interact with the target and so on and so forth. And each of these steps needs to be successful in order for the entire attack to be successful. So as a defender, you can try to focus on only one part of the kill chain and try to disrupt that for your adversary. And then, basically stop the attack before it is successful. And I think that's a bit more positive way of looking at this whole cybersecurity stuff, because then you don't feel so overwhelmed by the fact that it's hard to defend computers. And I think I agree there is no secure computer system, but it's not. I mean, especially nowadays, it's not only about securing single computer systems, but also about securing entire networks and entire organizations. And maybe one system will get breached because of there are people working positions where their job is to read emails and open attachments, and then we are mad at them if they open the wrong attachment that kind of looked very good anyway, or not that bad anyway. And I think this will always happen, as you said. There will always be the social engineering vector. There will always be exploits and vulnerable systems and so on. But I think the trick is to notice when this breach happens and then be able to react to it in a coordinated way and not like a head on fire way. What was the original question?
Good question.
Yes. Exactly. How can open source software help securing computer systems at the end of the day? That was the initial question.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. We digress to supply chain attacks, which are an interesting topic. And then
I laid on an attack vector on how to get your malware into the Debian supply chain.
Also
Kids,
true.
Don't try this at home. You're listening to trained professionals. I wish that was the case, but it's not. Anyway, it doesn't matter. No, back to the original topic. Lars, what do you think? How can open source software help with securing systems?
So I think, there is this whole, there is Linux, so I've heard, and it seems...
Did you mention you were on Windows earlier?
I hate all the operating systems.
Fair enough.
And all this open source software is already contributing immensely to this entire ecosystem. I can't imagine how how the world would look without something like the different server operating systems based on Unix or Linux. And I mean, it's just crazy what's already happening. And my impression is that these folks are really focusing security. And I think that's good. I think what the cyber branch of open source software would benefit a lot from would be a bit more like, how do you say, like open source management fairy dust. I think right now it's off.
What's this?
It's yeah.
Sounds good.
Keep talking, Lars.
Right now it's like just single people working on a cool tool on their own, and there are a few, but there are not a lot of IT security or cyber threat intelligence tooling where there is a stable community behind it. It's often, I mean, sometimes there is a community kind of artificially built around it because there is a big company behind it. So there is probably funding and all that stuff. I honestly don't know how all these software projects work. But more often than not, a lot of cool tools are just out there and there is no community. There is like a buzz factor of 1, and there is not a lot of maintenance being done. Probably because of wrongly aligned incentives. As I think, Martin, you said it in the very beginning, maintenance is boring, and putting something new out, and then tweeting about it and getting a lot of likes and retweets is much more exciting.
Can you name some examples of these toolings, just for the listeners' interest?
I can dig something up. I don't want to call anything out that is actually well maintained. But I can.
No worries. I was just saying, Lars, that you have these massive projects that, like Metasploit. For those people in the audience who do not know what Metasploit is an offensive security tool that helps you with breaking into other computers, into other people's systems. In terms of
we don't call that break-in. We call that adversary emulation.
Lars works in marketing. Exactly. I'm just a techie. Sorry. Apologies. No, jokes aside. Yes, let's keep these marketing terms to a minimum if possible. I'm joking. So if somebody tries to enter a computer system without prior consent, let's put it this way. Actually, in that case, with prior consent, because normally what these offensive security analysts do, also known as, in simple terms, penetration testers, they get retained. They then basically have the client sign a piece of paper saying it's okay to break into my system or to compromise my system. And then they basically get network access, or they just do it kind of black hat from the outside without prior knowledge of any systems. And there are tools like Metasploit and friends come into play which can immensely simplify the whole automation behind such an attack vector. If I take a look at Metasploit, and links of course will be in the show notes, I see at least a couple of hundred contributors contributing modules and working on the general code base. And I reckon that's actually a pretty good example for a well-maintained project in the area of offensive security.
Absolutely. I mean, I couldn't agree more. I mean, you picked, I think, one of the best maintained projects out there. It's an offensive tool, as you said, so pick everything that I will be saying now with a grain of salt. I have no idea. I really don't know how to do offensive security. I merely, I don't know, dabbled a little bit in exploitation, but it's really not my jam. But yes, that's a very well maintained project, and it's also like a how do you say, like a seal of approval for a vulnerability or for a new technique in offensive security if there is a Metasploit module that does it for you, basically. And yeah, automation obviously plays a huge role there. The attackers, as I said, they are companies. I mean, the type of attacker that you just mentioned, that's a real company, because they run penetration testing shops, and they have this service offered to their customers to try to break in. So they are obviously companies. But even the black hat threat actors, people that try to get ransomware on your network and encrypt all your data, these are also they use automation a lot, like real companies. They have like CI/CD and continuous delivery, and they have code reviews, and they have job descriptions and interview assessment centers and all that stuff. And they just run software companies, so automation is very important for them. And I'm I'm honestly not sure how big of a role something like Metasploit plays there, because a lot of the threat actors run their own tooling still, because it caters better to their needs. I don't know. But there is no reasonable, well-maintained software project for the other side, for the defender side, so to say. I mean, there are some projects like MISP or all these things for indicator sharing, but I mean, indicator sharing is like bottom of the barrel for cyber threat intelligence. It's like, yeah. But there is nothing. I mean, for example, there are a few sandboxes out there, like open source sandboxes that you can install locally. There is like one from the CERT from Poland, from the Emergency Response Center, Computer Emergency Response Center from Poland. And there is the Cuckoo sandbox, obviously, and there are a couple of others. But all these tools are, they exist, and they sometimes have a few people contributing, but not a lot. And they also have a very, very slow development velocity, so to say. So there are just a couple of commits are trickling in all the time, while the field of cyber threat or cyber is very fast paced. Like there is a new attack vector or new delivery strategy every other week, every day. I don't know. And addressing all this, there is no framework or anything like that. So, I mean, if you happen to know open source contributors who are bored and don't know what to do next, I think that would be a very cool project.
Interesting people. So if you have spare cycles and if you want to get famous, here's your chance.
Absolutely. I think it's Yeah, I think that's what I'm saying. For example, let's take sandboxes as an example. There are these public sandboxes like Hybrid Analysis, Any.Run, Triage, and all these things. It's basically you send them a sample where you don't know if it's evil or not, and they will execute it in one or multiple environments and try to make it behave bad if it has that capability in it. And then they present you a report that has a lot of technical details, but oftentimes it also has a big red button at the top that says malicious or not malicious, which is like one of the stupidest classifications there is. But anyway, it will also give you a lot of stuff like API traces, what Windows API functions were called, what network indicators were contacted, what URLs were downloaded, what processes were launched, and so on and so forth. And there is nothing that you can just install and it works. It's always a lot of work to get something like this up and running, and then also keep it up and running, because the malware that you want to throw at it is getting more complex every day, and there is more samples every day. And I think that's it. There is no counterpart to there is no LibreOffice or whatever it's called for the Microsoft Office.
Yeah, Open Office,
or Open Office. Sorry.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, the other side of the open source story is clearly that, in general, open source software is well maintained, as in, take Linux, right? So, there being the case that, they spend a lot of time and effort on security and lots of eyes on it and things like that. So, apart from the tooling, that's kind of one of the benefits that open source brings to the whole. Let's say, security of computer systems, right?
Now that we talked about it a bit, and this also kind of follows up on one of the recent episodes. You had an episode about compilers, right? A few weeks back.
Yeah, we did. Yeah.
At least you published it a few weeks back.
Martin, I told you we had a listener, right? And we just found him.
Yeah, we found him.
No, I really enjoyed that episode. I listened to it when I went running the other day, and I really enjoyed it, especially since everything was correct. I mean, there was like misspoken one or two things at some places, but everything was so correct. It was listening to it.
Well, at least we got something right.
People, if you have yet to listen to the episode, please don't listen to the episode while operating heavy machinery or driving. Please don't do this.
Or running in the woods. I don't think that it was boring. Quite the opposite. I think it was pretty exciting. And on that topic, there is another interesting. I brought up sandboxes as one of these tools where there is no. There is another set of tools, namely decompilers. And I mean the name compiler is kind of weird because I mean in some sense it compiles one language that is hard to read for a human into another language that is hard to read for a human.
Even harder, yeah.
Even harder, yes. And one could make the point that it's kind of arbitrary what is harder to read. I mean, I haven't met a single person who says that assembler is easier to read than C, but maybe there are some C++ code fragments out there that are very hard to read. Anyway, apart from compilers, there's also a whole set of tools that focuses on decompilation. So basically starting with a binary and then trying to reconstruct the source code as good as possible. And there is an industry standard in software reverse engineering that is called IDA or hexrace. So IDA is it stands for interactive disassembler, and it's kind of the foundation. And then there is a plugin for that allows you to also decompile the disassembled code, and it will present to you kind of some pseudo codes of the assembly instructions. It will try to identify functions in the assembly and then try to come up with variables that were used in the original code. And I mean, this is obviously not perfect because during compilation, a lot of stuff gets lost, in particular, most data types and variable names and function names and so on. And these decompilers then try to make sense of all that and try to reconstruct it. And you as a reverse engineer, or I as a reverse engineer, then have the task to also reconstruct the stuff that couldn't be reconstructed automatically. For example, function names, variables, variable types, and so on and so forth. And then after some massaging, you get back some pseudocode that often looks very, very C-like, and then it's easier to understand the algorithm behind it. And there now is an open source tool out there that is similar to IDA. So before there were a lot of open source tools and none of them was even close to being on par with IDA. IDA was just so far ahead, so much better. You could reverse engineer so much faster than without it. It was insane. And I mean, IDA is as close source as it gets, and it's very expensive as well. I think you pay a few $1,000 a year for a single seat license and stuff like that. I mean, IDA with the hexrace decompiler. And then suddenly the NSA of all entities out there decided to open source their decompilation tool, which is called Ghidra. And this is basically, it's not as good as IDA, I would say. So if you're really, really serious in reverse engineering, you still will not come around IDA. But it's not classes below it. And that, I think that was a game changer when the NSA did that a couple of years ago. I think 4 or 5, pandemic, probably 6 years ago, something like that. I can look it up and you can put it in the show notes. You may or may not put it in the show notes. I think this is how you say it here.
Yeah, links to the show notes. If we can find it.
There was also a talk at FLOSS about this, right? If I recall correctly.
Yeah. Also by myself, I think.
Indeed, very much so.
Stopping with the self-plugs now. Anyway, and this was a huge game changer, in my opinion, because it kind of made the whole reverse engineering thing much more accessible. Before that, people basically needed to steal an IDA license. IDA leaked from time to time, so people could use it. But that was the big change, and now people can just legitimately use a very powerful decompiler, which is Ghidra. So I would say Ghidra, and there are a few intermediate solutions, for example, Binary Ninja, just to kind of complete the list here. And it's also closed source, but it isn't as expensive as IDA, so it's a bit more accessible. But I think the order of quality is IDA's the best, then Ghidra, then Binary Ninja right now. But I mean, your mileage may vary, and when this episode is finally aired, maybe this changed. I don't know. Anyway, I think that's a pretty cool thing, that there is an open source decompiler out there that at least theoretically people can contribute to and can open issues on GitHub and so on and so forth. That all being said, and then I will take a break talking, the decompiler still has a lot of very fundamental issues. So there are like, I can't recall from the top of my head now, but there are just some very stupid things that are still broken there. And yeah, there's probably just no time or no effort or no priority on fixing them. I don't know, for example, if you create, so it has a feature to automatically create class structures. So, I mean, object-oriented code looks very nasty when you decompile it. So there are features for it to guess like member variables of the class and vtables and so on and so forth. And if you use that feature, it will create like beautiful class structures for you. And then you can rename the members, how they're used and so on. And the thing is, if you then rename the class and you forget to rename the underlying struct that it also creates, then the decompiler just crashes. And that's like a very, I don't even know how this can kind of happen, but this happens a lot in these tools. It really feels like the community is so small that not enough people have these very fundamental issues.
Well, if I believe popular, let's say, television programs that deal with cybersecurity, everybody just reads assembler, right? They don't bother with the reconstructing code from. But yes, that's clearly not for everybody.
Yeah. You are alluding to these hacking in movies tropes, or
yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Hack the firewall. He's using proxies and so on. Yeah.
No, I mean there was a recent BBC series as well, where I mean the people in MI5 they just read the assembler and can work it all out from there, right?
Okay. So I mean, if you're reading the assembly, I think you're doing something wrong because it's just too slow. Sure. Yeah. You cannot, as a reverse engineer, you cannot avoid it entirely. Sometimes the decompiler just falls on his nose and makes a mistake and shows wrong code and so on. Then you need to go back to the assembly and understand what is broken there. But it's just too slow. If you just look at assembly and try to reconstruct everything from that, you take ages for a single malware family. And that's especially since writing software. I mean, especially when I'm talking to developers and I say something like this, I'm not getting the best feedback, but I will say it anyway. Writing software is quite simple, right? You need to. It's not obviously, but writing a new malware, I think is relatively simple compared to analyzing it and reverse engineering it. So there is like an asymmetry there, and only with tools like decompilers and automatic deobfuscation and all that stuff do we as defenders even have a chance to stand up against these really evil criminal corporations.
Do you think that this is the biggest challenge at the moment in that area?
You really want a one sentence answer to your question? What is the biggest challenge in cybersecurity?
Don't make it two.
Cybersecurity.
Just a couple of minutes, no worries.
I think a big challenge, in fact, is tool quality. Yes, I think that's a challenge. I think that's also the reason why security companies have such an easy job selling their stuff. Almost independently of quality. And yeah, I mean, that would go a long way if, I don't know, there would be a very powerful endpoint protection solution in open source, for example. I mean, there are tools like Zeek or OS Query for Zeek or other things, but there is nothing that you can, quote unquote, just roll out in your environment and get visibility into endpoint actions and so on. Yeah, I think it's a tool. I think that's a big problem.
Yeah. It's a tool. It's a toolbox, and you're spot on there. You have, for example, you have Snort that does that does IDS. You have Fail to Ban that does also to some extent IDS and stuff like that. But it's not an out of the box solution because every server setup is different, and then you have to basically configure all these components yourself.
Yes,
I think
and
you
there
can get some distributions that give you a baseline, but it's not solid.
Yes, I mean you brought up a few things that are very classic defending tools, like Snort to defend your perimeter. So you have like a network perimeter and want to write Snort rules and get alerts if something suspicious happens there. But there is also a whole different angle to that. You can also think about just computers, and especially nowadays where a lot of stuff moved to home working. There is not the classic perimeter anymore with a corporate building that has controlled exits, network exits, that you can then monitor. You have people all over the place. You have people with their smartphones checking business email. You have people with their laptops traveling the world and so on. So I think maybe I honestly don't know. I haven't done my homework there, but I don't think that there is a readily available open source solution to protect these endpoints without the stuff that you mentioned. All ignoring that setting up a network protected by Snort is a beast on its own, and then doing all that well and without making mistakes is all even harder. And then there is tool interactions which are also hard, and then you have notification fatigue at some point. You just get a lot of Snort alerts. What do you do with them in the end? It's just there's so much stuff. Now I'm getting depressed talking to you guys.
I like that word, notification fatigue.
Don't get depressed, Lars. No, don't. we try not to either, so that's okay.
Yeah.
But Martin, you had a question.
Yeah, I just wanted to clearly Lars is very passionate about the subject, and this is why you started the podcast. Is that right? And what you're trying to achieve with the podcast?
Yes, absolutely. That's why I. So I wanted to. Okay. So a lot of my non-techie friends asked me what I do, and I tried to explain it to them, and I was just lost. It was the.
Don't listen to this instead.
Yeah. Okay. And I was just lost. I was like, yeah. So you. I mean, we all stare at computer screens all day. So you pick apart malware, and then what? Yeah. Then I write it down what it does. Yeah. And then what? Yeah. Then someone pays for reading what I just wrote. Who is that? It was just very hard for people to understand what the value is in that and so on. And I think one reason for the podcast is to change that, to get like a better understanding for the people why that all makes sense and why it makes sense to analyze incidents, why it makes sense to look at, to understand that the Olympic destroyer incidents, which was a Winter Olympics, not the last one, but the one before that, the Winter Olympics before that, it was a false flag operation, for example. I mean, with high confidence, probably highly likely, yada yada. That it's important to understand that an incident like this, who did it and how they did it, and also it's important to understand if someone did it who tried to mimic someone else. That's actually what happened there, and I think it's important for people to understand that from a lot of perspectives. I mean, we are getting almost philosophical now. I mean, for a policymaker perspective, from a highly strategic perspective, from nation states who want to defend their countries against cyber threats and so on and so forth. I think one reason of the podcast was to explain to people why that's important. I actually never thought about a mission statement for the podcast. You definitely caught me on the wrong foot here. But I mean, I kept on talking.
No, that's clearly something you enjoy as well. Just to clarify for those not in cybersecurity, can you send a few words on the false flag scenario?
Yeah, I mean that's normally a critique or a critic that you critique. Is that a word? Is that an English word, Martin? Okay, cool.
Criticism.
Yeah, the criticism. That's what I was looking for. So that's often a criticism that you get. Especially if you do the attribution, then it's something you need to listen to a lot. Yeah, what if this is just the NSA pretending to be Russia or China or whatever? And the short answer to that, sure, you can never be sure if that's correct or not. But I mean, there is a whole profession that tries to not get fooled, and we try to do our best there, so to say. And in some sense, it's a bit similar to the classic law enforcement angle as well. I mean, if there is an alleged criminal being in court or something, and then they get sentenced to something, you can never be sure if it really was them, even if they said they did it. Maybe they were under duress and just said that they did it. Maybe they didn't do it at all. I mean, you can never be sure, but there are processes that try to reduce the probability of such a misattribution of a crime to a person. And the same, in my opinion, should be true or is true for a lot of these cyber threat intelligence shops. We try to not fuck up. I think that's the TLDR.
That sounds a good initiative.
In general, not only in cyber threat. And there are, and I think one thing one can say is there were incidents where the community, the cyber threat intelligence community as a whole, identified false flag operations. I will just take the Olympic destroyer. There are a few cool YouTube documentations on that. I will send you some links over so you can may or may not put them into the show notes. It was a very kind of crude false flag operation, but it was one nonetheless. So it was a Russian threat actor, probably backed by the Russian Secret Service. And they just wrote malware to carry out a wiping operation against the Olympic Winter Games. And right before they deployed the malware to the target systems, they overwrote the PE header of the file. So the PE header is PE stands for portable executable. That's the .exe files for Windows. And they just used the PE header of a known malware family that was attributed to North Korea, so to a North Korean threat actor.
Okay.
So if you just take a superficial look at the malware, you're like, oh yeah, this is North Korea. And then it takes a lot of time to figure out that there are discrepancies and that a few things don't line up. It's like in a crime novel. And then you try to make sense of it. And I mean, the Russian Secret Service in this situation probably wanted to sow like doubt in the whole process of cyber attribution by. And especially in the very beginning, in the first 2 days after the incident, it looked bad. There were like tweets from the big cyber shops out there, one attributing it to Russia, one attributing it to Iraq, one attributing it to North Korea, and one to China. It was like as bad as it gets. But as time passed by, like the facts piled up to, in the end, come to the conclusion that it was, in fact, Russia in this situation. So, yes, false flag operations happen, and you can never be sure that's in the nature of the beast if you did a correct attribution or not. But, yeah, we try to not fuck up.
Probability, right? Yeah. Yeah, fair enough. All right. No, that's been great. I have to drop off in a minute, so thank you very much, Lars. But I'll leave it with Chris to finish off for yourself. It's been great. Thank you.
Yeah, Martin, thanks. It was great talking to you, and thanks for all your time. Sorry I think we are over time. I don't know. You probably only have 1 hour episode. Something
No worries. Martin is on a particular stress at the moment with regards to time because normally we record between 4 and 6 hours. And then we cut this down a little bit, as you noticed with the compiler episode. But as I said, our average recording time is about 5 hours, give or take. So we have a few minutes left. No jokes
Okay.
aside, we're a little bit cautious of the time of our guests. Is there anything that we should squeeze in apart from plugging Armchair Investigators once again? No, I think we've done this.
No, I think we've covered that.
No, exactly. Is there anything that we should squeeze in before we wrap this up?
No, I think we covered the big topics. I just started listening to your cryptocurrency episode. That's a whole different topic, obviously.
Yes.
I reckon that you too are into cryptocurrencies. You're running a whole ledger on one of your servers, and Martin is even mining.
Without any of our lawyers being present, I cannot comment on that. No jokes aside. No, I run a Bitcoin reference station, but just as a client. And if I'm not completely mistaken, yes, Martin does some mining, or used to do anyway.
I think does that combine with your Tor relay? Isn't there a bit of a combination?
No, Martin, it doesn't. And I thought you had to drop off.
Oh, really? Okay. Yes, I'm going to head off.
In that case, we might as well wrap this up. Okay, if Martin has to go, there's a thing called the Poxes, as in the picks of the week. Martin, why don't you go if you have to leave?
Oh, sure. Yes, I would like to. Sorry, are you familiar with the Poxes?
Yes, I've listened to a few of your episodes.
Okay. Oh, yes, of course.
So I know what the Pox is.
Yes.
I even prepared one. Was I supposed to prepare one?
Oh, well done. That's excellent.
Yes,
probably more than we've done.
Speak for yourself, just go ahead anyway.
Yeah. My Pox of the week is a guy called David Bombay, something like that. Anyway, he does a whole bunch of videos on YouTube on various bits of hacking devices and stuff, which is quite interesting to watch when you're bored about normal day-to-day programming. Yeah, worth a look up.
Any particular focus on this?
Well, it's things like devices for RFID things or Wi-Fi hacking, stuff like that. Yeah, so it's very, but he does a very good job. He's clearly in that field of work, but he's he makes it quite understandable for many people. So, yep.
Excellent. So even I would have a chance to understand this. Very good. I must check this out. Lars, over to you.
Yes. So my Pox or my recommendation is a 2020 film. It's called The Mole. I googled it right before the recording here. So it's not some Netflix show that also is called The Mole. It's a 2020 film, The Mole, with the subtitle "Undercover in North Korea," and it's just a crazy story. I think it's a documentary by I think even the BBC. But the craziness of the story is that it's literally a Danish chef who goes deep undercover into North Korea and sheds some lights on this otherwise very, very shrouded country, so to say. And the movie is just...
comedy?
No, that's a serious documentary. Exactly. It's a Danish chef going deep undercover in North Korea, and it's not a comedy. It's actually... It's pretty tough stuff, so to say. He also gets debriefed later by a professional from the MI5, and former MI5. I think she whistle blew at some point. Anyway, the cast of the movie is also interesting, but I will not spoil anything more. Just watch it. I can definitely recommend that.
That's interesting. And continue. Thank you very much, Lars. And continuing with that movie theme, my Pox of the week is also a movie called A History of Violence. It goes back, I think, to 2005, so it's a little bit older. And it stars Viggo Mortensen, Ed Harris, and some other Class A actors. Without giving too much away, it's probably one of the most of the strongest performance I've seen of good old Viggo Mortensen recently. So it's about a chef in a small town that has a little bit of history. Let's leave it at that, because otherwise, yes, we would be looking at spoilers. But apart from that, it's really a movie worth checking out. And Lars, with that, thank you very much for your time. And looking forward to having you on the show at some stage in the future.
Absolutely. Just reach out and we can schedule something. Thanks for having me, obviously. It was great fun. Time flew by talking to you.
Yes. The pleasure is just ours, as in all ours. Yes. This is The Linux in-laws.
You come for the knowledge.
But stay for the madness.
Thank you for listening.
This podcast is licensed under the latest version of the Creative Commons license, type Attribution Share Alike. Credits for the intro music go to Blue Sea Roosters for their song Solid Market, to Twin Flames for their piece called The Flow, used for the segment intros, and finally to Celestial Ground for their song Sweet Justice, used by the Dark Side. You find these and other ditties licensed under CC at Jamendo, a website dedicated to liberate the music industry from choking copyright legislation and other crap concepts.